So straight up confession, I've never played World of Warcraft, and when I went to this screening, the film hadn't actually been rated, not in Australia anyway. So I took a bit of a risk and took my 8-year-old son with me. And he was easily, unsurprisingly, he was easily the youngest person at the screening. He was the only child at the screening, and actually he was probably the youngest person by about 15, maybe 20 years. So he was loving it. He was in his element. He's also somewhat game obsessed. So as it turned out, I'm really glad I took him because he absolutely loved this film. It was right up his alley. So me, I'm glad I took my child. But if you're concerned about the kind of content, if you're planning to take a child, or of course going to see it yourself, I want to talk about what kind of violence you'll see, because the film in America at least is rated for violence. I think it's actually extended sequences of intense fantasy violence or something is the rating. So, but I want to start out by saying the battle sequences, even though they're quite epic, the film largely is a fairly bloodless affair. I mean, yes, you do see blood and both red and green varieties. You see a bit of, you know, blood on faces, and you see bloody wounds, a bit of blood, like oozing blood and that kind of thing. But it isn't really, I wouldn't call it a bloody film. I certainly wouldn't call it a gory film. The violence, being a battle kind of heavy film, yeah, there's a lot of sword battles and very close quarter battles. So everything from fist fighting, so punching and kicking and being kneed and elbowed and headbutted and all those kind of close quarter, you know, moves, to the more, you know, the larger, more epic scale shooting and being run through with swords. A lot of sword action actually. So quite a few characters are either run through and stabbed, and all of that sort of stuff. And you do see a little bit of injury detail on a couple of characters, but generally it's, you know, a kind of a non-character is killed and then the film moves on. So it's very much like gameplay, I have to say. You don't really get to know those characters, you don't feel anything. There's no shock or horror when they're kind of stabbed or murdered or whatever. You do see quite a few corpses on the ground actually, from these battles as well as from other things. There's one whole scene actually where there's a room full of corpses under sort of bloodied sheets. But again, you kind of see, if you're looking for it, you'll see it. It's not really lingered upon. I should say that animals get a little bit of a bad rap in this film as well when it comes to violence. So there's a few animals which are kind of grabbed and attacked. So I think one is run through with a sword, and one of them, it's implied that they're caught and later skinned because you see a character wearing like a wolf skin afterwards. So there's the implication there that it was caught and killed. But, you know, generally, I mean, there's an animal which is thrown and that sort of stuff, but generally the violence lays with the human and orc kind of characters, humanoid characters, if you like. So there's magic in this film as well, and probably the most potentially upsetting sequence, particularly for kids, is some characters, I guess I can describe it as they're kind of life sucked. So it's like their life force or their spirit, their soul is sucked out of them. And this is done by characters kind of put their hands towards them and the breath kind of comes out of them and then it's sort of captured and kept. So it's a little bit creepy because it almost verges on horror film sort of behaviour. So it's a bit cringeworthy. My son was okay with it, but yeah, that's the only part of the film I think might get under your skin. And when these characters are completely emptied of their life or breath or soul, whatever you want to call it, then they kind of collapse to the ground. And most of them look depleted, so their skin has decomposed very quickly, and you can see that all the blood really has kind of been sucked out of them. Not literally, like you don't see blood leaving the body, but they're kind of starved and they look like old corpses, even though they've only just been freshly killed, if you like. So that, I think, best sums up the violence. One thing I do want to talk about, and it isn't really violence, it's more kind of in the sex and nudity category, I guess, is there's a childbirth scene. So this isn't particularly graphic. It's a little bit, oh, I don't know, I guess I'm watching it as a mum, so for me it's, you know, I've seen it before. But kids, it might be a new scene to them. You don't really see anything gory or offensive, but in one of the in this scene and part of it, the child is sort of born blue. So there's the implication that the baby has died in childbirth. I don't want to give away what actually happens, but you know, this is something to be aware of, because obviously death during childbirth or losing a baby is a very personal issue. So if this is something that affects you or someone that you're planning to take to this film, please just be aware of that, because it might be a little bit upsetting. But they're probably the two major points, you know, the life sucking and also this, what you see, it looks like a dead baby, are probably the most offensive or upsetting or potentially upsetting parts of the film. Everything else is pretty clear and pretty, I don't know, pretty inoffensive. So swearing, for example, there is no swearing, there is no offensive language, so there isn't even any real name calling in the film. So swearing isn't an issue. Likewise, alcohol and drugs and smoking, there isn't any at all. The closest this film comes to any kind of drug-related content is a character is sat inside what looks like a pond of blue healing liquid in order to heal themselves, and they just talk about getting some medicines for them. So really that's as close you'll get to any kind of, I guess, drug use. And likewise the sex and nudity. You don't see any sex. Nudity, yeah, there's some skimpy clothing and some cleavage. Most of the male characters are either shirtless or, you know, you can see their rather bare, hairy chests. But again, nothing particularly offensive or upsetting there. The only sexual reference is there's a female character lying on the ground, and she kind of talks about one of the male characters coming to lie with her. And then a joke is made out of that. So again, sex isn't a theme in this film. So plenty of reasons to go and enjoy Warcraft. If you're a gamer or if you've played the game, I think you'll love this film. Even for me, who's never played the game, I found so much to like about it. Not least the actual world building. The world building is phenomenal. The special effects, the CGI is breathtaking. I mean, there's times when some of the cinematography actually takes your breath away. It's almost vertiginous because it is so real and so grand and just so spectacular. So even if you're not particularly a gamer, there's actually a lot of reasons why you can go and enjoy this film. The weakness of the film is probably the storytelling. I have to admit, half the time I had no idea what was going on, and I had to get some people to explain to me afterwards what was kind of happening and who was who. So there isn't a lot of backstory, and there isn't a lot of explanation through the film. It gets quite muddled, and at times, I mean, really, I just didn't know what was happening. And there's all these little extra scenes where it introduces new plot points and then they kind of disappear again. So I got a little bit lost in that. But anyway, as I said, it was so spectacular to watch. The visuals were so astounding that I enjoyed it anyway. So if you see Warcraft, please do let me know what you think. Enjoy.